Welcome back. Well, the federal government has indeed shut down overnight after Democrats and Republicans failed to agree to a funding bill. The measure required 60 votes to pass, but it fell short in a 55-45 vote. Democrat Senators John Fetterman and Catherine Cortez Masto, along with independent Angus King, voted with Republicans to support the bill. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, the only Republican to vote against it. Fetterman told me he would be supporting keeping the government open on Sunday. Sunday Morning Futures. Watch.
Always wrong to shut our government down. That is a core responsibility. I'm always going to vote against those things. And if it's the Republican side or now it's our side, especially with the kinds of chaos that we are facing after Kirk, and now there's a Cat 5 storm that might hit our nation too. Now, and you're willing to threaten us down. I was the only Democrat voting against that. And now that CR was the same CR from the Biden administration as well, too.
Right.
For me, I'm a big believer of if you want to change the policies, win elections. And that's really the way democracy works.
The Congressional Budget Office says an estimated 750,000 federal employees could face furloughs. The OMB formally instructing agencies to begin shutdown procedures Tuesday night. Another memo is expected today with the latest. The Senate will also vote again today for another shot on this on both the House-passed CR and the version introduced by Chuck Schumer. Joining me now is Counselor to the Treasury Secretary Joe Lavorgna. Joe, thanks so much for being here this morning. Good to see you. This marks the fourth government shutdown this century, the first shutdown since 2019, and that shutdown had a record 35-day standoff over border wall funding, you remember. 35 days is a long time. How long do you think this shutdown goes on?
I don't know, Maria, but this one, I mean, the problem with this is that the Democrats had voted on 13 clean continuing resolutions in the past, and therefore the government should be open. And this really is squarely on their shoulders. So I hope it doesn't last as long as 35 days. That was a partial shutdown. There were some appropriations that were in place, but we'll see what happens. I mean, fortunately, we've got many men and women in armed services and law enforcement and such that will be working. They won't be getting paid, but they will be working, so we'll be safe. The country will be protected, but it's just a sad situation we're in, as Senator Fetterman alluded to. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. Yeah. And we'll see where it goes. Well,
the economy, meanwhile, showing real strength. Of course, the stock market is reacting to strong earnings and a strong backdrop. We're at record highs in the market, even though we're pulling back this morning. The final read of second quarter GDP showed the economy grew at its fastest pace in nearly 2 years, driven by strong consumer spending and business investment. Last week's initial jobless claims dropping to the lowest level since July as the Fed lowers rates last month for the first time since December. Joe, we're not going to get a jobs number out on Friday, but how would you assess things right now?
The economy, Maria, is very strong. We grew almost 3% in the second quarter. And federal spending, the administration, Secretary Bessent, and the president are really trying to get rid of government waste, abuse, and fraud. And we shrunk government spending 5% in the first half of the year. If you take the federal number out of the Q2 GDP reports, we're well over 4%. So it was all private sector led. That looks also to be the case in the third quarter. Third quarter GDP could be upwards of 4% as well, again, led by strengthening consumer spending, reflecting the blue-collar wage boom we're seeing, what we call the CapEx comeback. Companies very optimistic on the future, which tells us any soft patch in the jobs data, whenever it comes out, will be short-lived, that we'll see a big acceleration. However, Maria, as you mentioned on the Fed, the Fed did lower rates finally. President Trump rightly has been frustrated by the slow pace of the Fed. We do see some interest-sensitive areas of the economy that should be much stronger, such as housing. We're seeing no tariff effect in the data. The Fed fortunately says it is going to cut rates more. I take them at their word. We'll see how low they go, but we would like to see lower rates to let the economy boom even more and reach its full potential.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, while the month of October is beginning with a shutdown, the month of November will begin with the Supreme Court doing hearings on the president's emergency lever that he has pulled for these tariffs. The president has a new round of tariffs kicking in at midnight. They include 100% duties on pharmaceutical companies, which are not manufacturing in America, 25% on heavy trucks, increased tariffs on home furnishings. The White House has also announced an historic deal with Pfizer, launching a new website, Trump RX, to let Americans buy medicines directly from manufacturers. I spoke with Jamieson Greer, your colleague, the U.S. Trade Representative and asked him about the Supreme Court decision in November and whether or not the Trump administration has a backup plan if, in fact, SCOTUS goes against you. Watch.
As for a backup plan, I think the takeaway point is tariffs are part of the policy landscape. If the Supreme Court, against our expectation, goes against the president, of course, we'll have alternative tools that we'll explore. I won't go into too much detail here, but tariffs are going to be part of the policy landscape.
So there are ways to get to that kind of revenue looking at other constitutional items that you can actually tap into. It doesn't have to be necessarily about IEEPA.
Well, so Congress has the fundamental power to manage tariffs, and they have delegated a huge amount of that power to the president. Just for example, at my office, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, we have an authority called Section 301. You may recall that in 2018, we first imposed substantial tariffs on China. We used that Section 301 authority. What did we do? We investigated certain unfair practices of China, which is forced technology transfer. We calculated the value of the harm, and we imposed appropriate tariffs to remedy that harm, with the idea being if the Chinese ever fix this, then we could talk about removing the tariffs. Chinese have not fixed their forced technology transfer or IP theft, so we still have these tariffs in place. And in fact, last week, the court case people aren't talking about is the Federal Circuit came down, and after 7 years of these 301 tariffs being in place, that court said the USTR was fully within its rights and the president was within his rights to impose those tariffs. And so Section 301 is an incredibly reliable tariff regime.
So, Joe, I know that you're expecting SCOTUS to go your way, but it sounds like you would use Section 301 and Section 232 to keep up the revenue on tariffs. Should it not go your way?
Yes. Well, as Representative Greer said, there's other options, and he's not going to necessarily get into all the details. There are contingency plans made. But as you also said, Maria, we're confident that the president has the authority to use tariffs. They've been extraordinarily successul.
Yeah.
They're going to help the U.S. reindustrialize our base, which is long needed. We're raising upwards, actually a little bit more than $300 billion at an annual rate. Even the CBO, which is historically pessimistic, says it could lower the debt by $4 trillion over a 10-year period.
Amazing.
So they've been an incredible tool. And by the way, Maria, that's why the U.S. bond market has performed relative to its peers so well, is that the Trump administration, with the president's vision led by Secretary Besson, have really sort of solidified the fiscal foundation after historic deficits in the prior 4 years.
Yeah.
So we're hopeful that these policies remain in place. They've really put us on a very strong path.
Yeah, it's incredible. Look, you're talking about, what, $300 billion a year is what Scott Besson told us about. You rally that up over a 10-year period. You're talking about real money to take on the $37 trillion in debt. So good for you. Real quick, Joe, before you go, the Treasury and the IRS last week outlined specific workers who qualify for the no tax on tips deduction in the big, beautiful bill. What do you want to tell us about who qualifies and who doesn't on no tax on tips?
We're almost done with the comment period. It's a great program and very innovative. It includes digital asset producers or workers, so that's YouTubers, podcasters, live streamers, video makers. This is really a cool, neat program. And the good thing is, because the president, with the secretary's help, worked to pass this bill back in July, we can get everything in place, Maria, so that American workers can get their hard-earned refunds early in 26. So it's a great program, and we're going to have the final touches on it put in very soon.
I love giving people tips now. I tell them all, no tax on tips.
It's got to be voluntary. That's right. It's called a qualified tip.
I've become a bigger tipper. I was always a big tipper. Now I'm a bigger tipper. Joe, good to see you.
Great.
Joe
Thank you,
Lavorgna.
Maria.
Thank you so much. Stay with us. We'll be right back.